Okay, here we go again for the last time. This is the end. I'm going to cover the end of chapter 7 and just a little bit of chapter 8, just the beginning of it. What's on the board is the most important thing from chapter 8, but the first couple pages will also assist you. The first 3 pages of chapter 8. After that, I'm just going to have to let it go. There's some songs in there, there's some poetry. There's some stuff about American culture, about guns and about drugs and about how things are going as we get into the middle of the 21st century. However, for us, we're running out of time. This is the last lecture. I want to talk about American presidents. The American presidency is the longest continuously unbroken elected democracy in the world. It was the first major modern democracy to be created in 1776 when they declared independence. Little did they know that we would still be here. There are some question marks about where American democracy is going, this year and next year. So we'll have to see how that goes. I'm not here to predict the future, though. I'm just here to explain to you about the political system and try to make it a little bit interesting by telling you some things about certain presidents that are, again, sort of symbolic or representative of the system and who have had an effect on American culture. That's what we're interested in here. You don't have to be a political science major to understand this. However, you may not be super interested in politics because people in their 20s tend to be less so. But as you get older, you might become more interested as you become more invested. Americans did believe that classical republicanism is Roman republicanism. If you remember, the start of this book, we started way back in the Stone Age, essentially. But very quickly we started talking about the influence of the Roman imperial system on British culture and its impact over 400 years at the beginning of the British state. Britannia was the name of the province that was established by Rome. They had a republic. By the time they conquered England, it was an empire, but they still preserved some of those institutions throughout the empire, as at least as a pretense to being representative of the people. They didn't have a two-party system in Rome, but they had essentially two presidents who shared power, two consuls, until the imperial period. Then it was one first among many was the princeps, was Caesar Augustus. Octavian was the first individual to have power by himself for his entire career. Julius Caesar, of course, was a dictator. But you can look at the similarities between American. It's just a sort of cultural effect that wealthy, established families want to have power, and money makes the world go round. And capitalism, of course, didn't exist, but the Roman Empire was driven by military, expansion, and by its trade networks that even brought things as far away as sub-Saharan Africa or China, the places that people had never been. These trade goods would make their way all the way to the emperor's table. So there's vast economic and military systems that they established. America is like that. It pretends not to be an empire, but it's certainly a commercial empire in certain aspects. And we talked about the fact there's an appendix at the back of the book that lists all the battles and all the wars that the British and the Americans have been in over the last millennium, and it's constant. they're not very peaceful cultures for all of the claims of being peaceful that we make, especially Canada. Me being Canadian, we make the claim of being a peaceful country, but we're always somehow intertwined with the American and the British, foreign relations and their politics. So this idea that it's a republic, it's a modern republic, but it has certain aspects of the ancient republic that was Rome. That's what that means, okay? The bicameral legislature is its major feature, where there's a upper house and there's a lower house. And this is supposed to be the great equalizer, because the upper house is called the Senate, and in the Senate there are 100 senators. Each state gets 2 senators, right? So there's always 100. It's a fixed number. These senators tend to be wealthier individuals who have longer careers, and when you want to do something politically, you need that upper house of equal representation among all the states. Hawaii gets 2, California gets 2, Texas gets 2. Doesn't matter how big your state is, how much money you have, whether you're a tropical state or Alaska or empty state that's, full of animals and rocks and ice and mountains. It doesn't matter. Everybody gets 2. So there's 100. 50 times 2, because there's 50 states. So this upper house, they can, if they want to, they can block everything. So the representatives, the people who are representative of each state, like California has the most because it has the biggest population, those fluctuate. The numbers of people that come to Congress and sit in the House of Representatives, that fluctuates. So you've got a sort of representative, it's called the House of Representatives, so it's supposed to be representative of each state as a whole. I can't explain to you about the Electoral College, but basically each state sort of has to make its decision which way it's going. So you win states. You don't win. It's not a proportional democracy like how they have in Germany, and I'm assuming France has the same system. I don't know, but normally in Europe, that's the way you do it. It's the number of people that you get for your party. The number of seats is correlated to the popular vote. You may know that both Trump and George Bush Jr., George W. Bush, both of them lost the popular vote. Hillary Clinton beat Trump in terms of votes, but she lost badly in terms of states. So you can somehow, this is how this system works. He's like, you can win the presidency and not have control of the political system. Right now, Joe Biden's in this situation where he doesn't have control of the House of Representatives. The Republicans do. So he can't really do a lot unless he somehow gets the Republicans on board. At least some of them, because he's got a minority in the House. So this is how bicameral means, bi means 2. So when they try to make laws, the lower house debates it, puts it in a form, it goes to the upper house, it gets put on the floor of the Senate. The senators decide whether they approve it or not, and then it goes to the president's desk, and then the president signs off on it. So you've got these two groups that have to propose things, and then the president, there's kind of like a feedback thing. Presidents sometimes propose it and they reject it. Sometimes they propose it and the president rejects it. That's the way the American political system works. It's supposed to block itself. That's why some people don't realize that when they look at America, they're like, well, the presidents can't do anything, and the Senate can't do anything. Nobody can do anything by themselves. It's designed, to block each other or cooperate because it's for the greater good. Now, when you have a bunch of selfish, individualistic people who are wealthy and are only interested in their own, benefit for things, you have a big problem, because the conflicts just make the government ineffective. The system can really get it's these days, it's not designed just to have two parties. It's not designed to have these super blocks of politicians. It's really not designed to have parties at all. When the founding fathers made this, they didn't even really have a judicial branch. There wasn't a Supreme Court yet. They didn't really think about the role of the justice system. Donald Trump is talking about making the justice system more powerful so that he can use the judges and the law to give himself more power. And this would really destroy the whole system. This is supposed to be it. The triangle here is supposed to represent, the checks and balances of like this triangular relationship. The role of the justice system, the role of the Supreme Court, is to make sure that these two are functioning the way they're supposed to. That's the way it came into being. The first chief of the Supreme Court, that's what the role became, was to keep the checks and balances between the alumni. I think there's, on the American bill, there's this weird symbol. It's supposed to be representative of the Freemasons or Illuminati or something, but I think it just looks interesting. You can look in the American $100 bill and you can see Benjamin Franklin and the eye on the pyramid. It's supposed to be representative of enlightenment, I think. And this is a system of checks and balances. So if you see on the exam some questions about this kind of stuff, this is what the New Republic is. When I say this is the New Republic, this is the modern Republic of the United States, these are the things that are important. There's an executive branch, there's a legislative branch, there's a judicial branch. The president is the major part of the executive. There's a vice president in case something happens to him. There's the Senate and House and the bicameral legislature, and there's 9 Supreme Court justices. And they rule together. Often it's split, like 5-4, or sometimes they all vote together. Some not vote, but they rule together. They come up with they debate the cases, and then they come up with their decisions, and then the 9 of them release their decisions, and it's like a vote. Sometimes it's 9-0. Everybody's on the same team. Everybody has the same opinion. They do have political leanings, though, which is the unfortunate thing about the Supreme Court these days. It's not supposed to be political, but the presidents choose them, and then they stay there until they die. So when Bush gets to choose one, Obama doesn't get to choose any, and then suddenly Trump gets to choose somehow 3, I think, during his one term. The balance is tipped in favor of one party or the other. He happens to be a Republican, so the people he chose were more likely to interpret things from a Republican point of view, because that is their political leaning. And there was no real hiding of that. Everybody knew that's the case. Depending on the president, they may choose to pick somebody more neutral. There's been some very famous Supreme Court justices for that reason. Okay, so that's it. That's all that stuff there, except for I'm going to mention this group right at the end. But I want to talk about these guys. These are the American presidents that are in Chapter 7 in the textbook. So you have to read each section. There's a little bit of a biop taken right from Encyclopedia Britannica. Ronald Reagan was born February 6, 1911, Tampico, Illinois. You don't have to know where the person was born and what year it was, but you need to know some things, major things. So the American presidency, the first example I chose, these are all people within the last 100 years, okay? So FDR, I chose him because he's often people's favorite president. I think Donald Trump said one time, he changes his mind a lot, but he mentioned that FDR was his favorite president. I was pleasantly surprised by that choice. FDR did a lot of things that make him remarkable. He was a Democrat. He became president by beating President Hoover, who was a Republican and who was very, very capable, a very good president. But he happened to be president during the disaster of the late 1920s, right? The New York Stock Exchange crashed and the Great Depression began. And his policy was that the American economy was in a bubble and that he needed to let these banks fail. He needed people to go bankrupt, and he needed, the free market to correct itself. So his policy was to do as little as possible. It sounded like FDR was going to be like that too, but he started to change his tune when he realized that people were desperate. There was 30% unemployment. Something had to be done, and people actually needed reassurance. Like, they needed to get their confidence back. That's one of the reasons Hoover lost, is because he was confident and people weren't. Like, they just saw him saying, okay, it'll be fine, just wait until all these companies that have borrowed too much and are supposed to go away, and go bankrupt, just let them go. And only the best companies, it's kind of like a survival of the fittest kind of idea, where all the healthy institutions, financial, agricultural, economic, would survive, and this is natural selection or something. People didn't want to hear that when they didn't have enough money to eat, and they couldn't get money out of the bank and stuff like that. So FDR did this flurry of legislation, like just all the support stuff. It's called the 100 Days, and the first 100 days. And this is something that he's left behind as a political legacy that was not just like the two-party system. There was no Republicans and Democrats. George Washington was just George Washington. He wasn't a member of a party. I mean, he was a Federalist in principle, but there was no Federalist Party officially. There was no campaigning and all his contributors and lobbying and all the junk that's there now to make things complicated and to make people. I mean, sometimes people don't vote because there's just only two choices in this. They're almost the same sometimes. I wouldn't say Trump and Biden are very similar necessarily, but the Bushes and Clinton and Obama, these are a son and a father who have 3 terms, and 2 Democrats that have 2 terms, and Hillary was also Secretary of State, and she was a lifelong politician. She was very important, and she ran for president. So these families controlled the United States for like 20 years. And I know Barack Obama isn't generationally wealthy, that he came, his father was from Africa, and he was born in Hawaii, and he worked hard to get where he is. But he's certainly wealthy now and educated, and so is his wife. They've joined the top, upper class. He has the Obama Foundation, has lots of money, and there's lots of good programs and all that kind of stuff. But their policies, they're more Republican and moderate politicians than anything else. Trump is obviously atypical Republican, and Biden's more like FDR. But Trump admired FDR. One of the reasons is because he's so popular, and he won 4 terms, and he set precedents. Like the first 100 days of your term, you just set the tone for your entire presidency. And he won 4 times. He ended up, after he won the 4th time, he ended up passing away because he had been sick for a while. He did have polio, and so he was in a wheelchair for his entire life because he survived polio. But he was paralyzed. So you never see him in a wheelchair because they always have him sitting in a chair or behind something. They just take a picture of his upper body or have him in a chair all the time. Even in World War II, you know, he's meeting Stalin and Churchill on the other side of the world, and you know, you never see him in a wheelchair. Even the Soviets and the British journalists just respected the fact that FDR's condition, his illness, was just something that you just ignored, and it didn't slow him down. He was a very popular president, the only president to win more than 2 terms, and after he passed away, they made sure that the limit was 2 terms, and that all presidents following him were not allowed to have more than 2 terms. Unofficially, George Washington had 2 terms, and then he retired. So that was, everybody respected that. But FDR decided, no, I don't need, I shouldn't retire, even though I'm sick. I should continue. It's World War II. The country needs me. The world needs me. I'm going to keep becoming president until this is over, at least. And so he did, and he won. He won the election 4 times in a row. So he never served his 4th term, but he served 3 terms and then a little bit after he was elected. So he created all of these institutions and these projects, getting people. The government had all these construction programs to get people work. They built, highways and bridges and infrastructure, power plants, all kinds of stuff. He started spending money to try and get the economy jump started, but really nothing worked great, except for World War II. And then once America was fully involved in World War II after December 7th, 1942, which is one of his famous speeches. He gives a speech that starts December 7th, 1942, a day that will live in infamy, one of his great speeches. And he was a great speech writer, great public speaker. He used to talk on the radio and do these fireside chats to just tell the American people things are okay. FDR, one of his famous quotes is, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." That's just making people believe that he's got things under control. And I guess that's one of the things that Hoover didn't do, that FDR was able to do. People believed that FDR was capable of handling these enormous problems, right? World War II, huge problem, but FDR's got it under control. Mobilizes the American army. He defeats Japan. He defeats Germany with the help of the Allies. The economy, everything he solves everything. It's amazing. His reputation during his presidency was the Republicans detested him because he was unstoppable. There's lots of things he did that people don't agree with. He manipulated the Supreme Court. Maybe that's one of the things Trump admired about him. He tried to, but his own party was a little bit afraid of him. That's another similarity between FDR and Donald Trump. Sorry, FDR, if you don't like that because you're a Democrat. But Trump was a Democrat too, remember, at one time. Well, you guys don't remember because you're too young. But he used to be a Democrat, which is kind of shocking. But there are some weird similarities between presidents. All of them have certain things in common, even though they're on the opposite side of the fence sometimes. So FDR, there's not that much about FDR in the book, but the paragraph I write about where I emphasize the New Deal, which is his solution to the Depression, and his 4 terms in office, and the recovery, dramatic recovery in America. The unemployment rate when he was elected was like 30%. 1 in 3 people were out of work, and by the time he he died. World War II is nearing its end finally after 6 years, and the unemployment rate in America is essentially zero. Everybody's working as hard as they can to keep the military machine going until Japan and Germany surrender. So it's quite remarkable that the things he presided over, obviously he didn't do it by himself, but that's what the American president is supposed to do. He's supposed to provide leadership, and he was one of the great American leaders. Personally, my favorite president, if I can just weigh in, is still going to be Abraham Lincoln. But FDR might be a close second or third. I do like Eisenhower as well. Eisenhower is one of those George Washington type guys. He was the supreme commander of the Allied forces in Europe. Soviet Union on the other side was commanded by Stalin. FDR had Eisenhower in charge of Europe. So he was the supreme Allied commander. In some sense, he kind of, in a weird way, and he became the leader of NATO after that. When he quit, and you had to quit your military job, otherwise, you'd be a dictator. He stepped down from his lofty position as a military, 4-star general, became president, and he was the president who ended the Korean War, signed the armistice. I guess it's not officially over, but the agreement, the ceasefire that never stopped. He's there during that period, and he's during the 1950s after World War II. He has a lot of experience in the military. He was the one who was sort of opposing the Soviet Union in the 1950s after World War II. The beginning of the Cold War started with Truman, who inherited the presidency from FDR when he had passed away. And then Eisenhower continued it. The fact that he was so experienced as a general the Russians had a lot of respect for him. Everybody did. He was well known to be an excellent card player, and he was a very powerful man. But he was just not a scary looking person, just the most assured and calculating leader that I can think of. And he transformed himself into an effective president. He's a Republican. He's one of the only Republicans that I do really have respect for in the last 100 years. Hoover is another one. I think he was a good president too. But yeah, everybody, I'm not getting too political here. These are personal opinions here, not political ones that you need to follow. You make your own decisions. Kennedy is there because he was a different type of president. He won the election against Nixon, who would later become president anyway. Kennedy was handsome and younger, and they did the first televised debate. He was the first television president, so people actually looked at him, and that affected their vote. It was very, very close, and honestly, I think the television helped Kennedy enough that was the difference. That if Nixon and Kennedy had not been on TV, and you hadn't seen this young, handsome guy talking, Nixon was a really good, savvy politician. He was Eisenhower's vice president. So Kennedy ends up being shot. The thing that's everybody remembers about Kennedy is where they were. My parents were born in the early 1950s, and they can remember like where they were in elementary school, when Kennedy was shot, and like that's one of their oldest memories in their life is when that happened. Especially my mother, because my mother would have been like 8 years old, something like that. So she was pretty young when that happened. So I can remember where I was when 9/11 happened. I can remember it clearly, the people that I saw and what I was doing at university. I was in a second year university student when the World Trade Center was attacked, by those airplanes. I can remember that clearly. It's just a once in a lifetime kind of event, which it's just very crystallized in your memory. This is everybody was shocked by this supposed assassination by by Lee Harvey Oswald, or the guy in the grassy knoll, or somebody else. But there's a lot of conspiracy theories about Kennedy. He's a very famous president. Before that, he served in the Navy. He was popular with celebrities. He had lots of famous girlfriends, stuff like that. So it's kind of celebrity president, and television started to make, the personal life of the president, unlike FDR and Eisenhower, who could kind of separate their private life from the public. Kennedy people were gossiping about him while he was alive, and then they kept doing it. The Kennedy family is a very complicated thing too. His father wanted his older brother to be president, then his older brother passed away, so then Kennedy ended up being, the person his father favored, and he succeeded. Nixon fell out of favor for a while, but then I think he lost the trying to be elected as governor of California. It's not when you're vice president. I know Biden did it, but often you just don't transition to president easily. There's various reasons why Biden was able to do that. Part of the reason was because Hillary lost. I think if Hillary had won, who knows? I shouldn't speculate about the future, or the past, but who knows what would have happened. Vice presidents rarely have, attain the highest office after they've served as the sort of second man, unless the president gets killed, like Kennedy did. Lyndon Johnson automatically becomes president if the president dies for whatever reason. Of course, FDR passed away, and Harry Truman just suddenly was president. Theodore Roosevelt became president like that too. But Nixon had to get elected, and he did. And he did some amazing things. Probably the most famous thing he did positively was establish relationship with China. He suddenly, he was doing backdoor sort of secret negotiations, and these are the things that Nixon was kind of good at. So lots of people called him Tricky Dick, because his name was Richard Nixon, and Dick is a nickname for Richard. So Tricky Dick was always doing these sneaky diplomatic things, and he was very good at it. The Cold War sort of leveled out for a bit. He handled Vietnam as well as could be expected, considering. But he was always doing things secretly, and so he suddenly showed up in China basically, and was hanging out with Mao in China with the communists, and people were like shocked at he had figured out some way to do this. And I think our friend Donald Trump here also, he never mentions Nixon because of his reputation was destroyed because of the Watergate scandal, and he never got impeached because he just resigned. Unlike Trump, he just gave up, and Gerald Ford, his vice president, another vice president who becomes president because the president disappears, Ford pardoned him, so that just all of the investigations about him spying on people and all the recordings and all the investigations stopped because he decided to quit the presidency. It was too obvious that he was guilty, and his reputation was destroyed. So the Watergate scandal, when somebody says something gate, because people do that all the time for some reason, it's just the name of the hotel where the Democratic Convention used to meet and where Nixon's people tried to spy. Reagan is the last guy. And he's another of the Republicans that I can respect for certain things. I like his speeches. I don't like his economic policy. I think he was very, very wrong about the small government thing and cutting taxes. Something that Reagan started that went through and Obama and Clinton never really fixed was the easy money thing, where it's people are borrowing money too much, the government's spending too much money, and the American government's taking on more and more debt. Since Reagan was president, it's just gotten out of control. America owes so much money, and some countries are worse. Some countries have borrowed more money, but that's mostly because no country's borrowed more money, but it's about how much money you have. And America has a ridiculously big economy, so they can borrow more money against what they make. But it is something that's they're spending most of their money on the financing. Basically, they're paying interest and they're not paying any of the debt back. So Reagan was president twice. During his presidency, the debt got out of control, and Eisenhower used to tax rich people like upwards of 70%, of their salary, and Reagan created all these tax breaks and stuff. We see crazy things in the United States, like Mark Zuckerberg, the Meta Facebook guy. He earns $1 a year because he just owns all this stuff, and he just pays corporate tax and everything. So he's just paying very, very little tax, whereas somebody who's playing sports or a doctor or something might be paying 45% tax, and the richest people in the world are paying nothing, or relatively little. Taxes and how much tax you've paid and what you're doing with them. Donald Trump is in hot water with all kinds of financial issues because of those kind of things. This is the thing that kind of links the later Republicans, the Bushes and the Reagans and the Trumps. They all like to give tax breaks to rich people, and somehow the rest of the population thinks that's okay. I'm not one of those people. Of course, I'm not a rich person, so of course I'm not. But this group of people, I mentioned them right at the end of the chapter, and it's this NWO thing that George Bush said. This is the New World Order. Like, we're creating this, America-backed international system of capitalism. And you're either with us or against us in the 21st century. It's going to be another American century. You can see that Biden's involved in this too, opposing Chinese policies and Russian policies in Ukraine and in Taiwan and in South Korea and North Korea. These are common elements of American politics that go from FDR, not FDR, but Truman, I guess, post-World War II. It's still with us. We're still dealing with this. Like, what's the balance of power globally, and who are the world leaders, and how much should we interfere in other places? You probably know that nobody interferes more in other countries' affairs than the United States. At the same time, when other countries like China or Russia do it, Americans say you can't do that, but they're, in their other hand, they're doing it, at the same time. So that's a little bit hypocritical, I would say. Anyway, there's a few questions that asked. I'm not going to focus on these guys too much, but you're welcome. Like I suggested, there might be a question. There's going to be a question. I shouldn't say there might be a question. There'll definitely be a question related to chapter 7 and 8 and about American century, Hollywood, or presidency, or the American republicanism. You should know those things, because that's a 5-point question. One of those is going to appear on the exam. I'm not going to tell you which one, so you better know your stuff. And that's it. This is the end. I hope you're interested in some of the things that I taught you and that they help you going forward. My reflections, I will say, this class, obviously, I'm teaching it in English, and we are in Korea. So we made some comparisons between different countries, and hopefully some of these things will help you. They will translate to your own experience in your own life and help you to understand whatever aspect of culture that you're looking at the time. It'll help you perspective, help you feel a little bit more international. I think it's good for us to understand each other better, and down the road, hopefully this knowledge will be useful for you. Obviously, the language itself, doing a class like this in English, for some of you, you may go on to study in an English-speaking country. I hope you do. America, Australia, UK, Canada, I don't know, New Zealand. There's a lot of choices. South Africa, wherever you want to go. If you do well in this class, this is not the same as a North American class. I won't say that, but some students have mentioned that they see some similarities. That's because I'm North American and Canadian as well. So thank you for listening to me, and I wish you good luck on the exam, and have a great summer. If you need a reference, I'm always here. Just send me an email and we'll sort it out. Good luck. See you on Wednesday.